Hi. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Morning. It's great to see you here all so early this morning. You know, starting out with all this red, white, and blue, I think of freedom. Endowed by our Creator, defined by our Constitution, but defended each and every day by the men and women who proudly wear the uniform of these United States. If you're a service member, if you've served in our nation's military, or you're a family member of someone who served or is serving today, would you please stand up and be recognized? Thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you and all that you represent here in this country and around the world, fighting for freedom every single day. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, what makes America great is really based on freedom. I had the chance the other night. I was out for dinner on Tuesday night with my family, my brother's family, and my mother. We were living it up. We were at Chili's. And right before, we all came from different directions, and right before my family assembled for dinner, a woman came up to me and she introduced me to her daughter, who's going to be 7 in March. And it was cute. I leaned over and talked to her, and then she told me, kind of choked up, that she had come from Poland. And she said she was a supporter, and she talked a little bit about politics, but what really gripped me for today's panel was she told me that she could not fathom, having come to America from an Eastern European country, she couldn't fathom how anyone in this country would embrace socialism. Because you see, she knew firsthand, as did her family, the failures of socialism. She said she knew it not only from the past, from where she came from, but she sees it just as we do today, failing around the world. She came to America because she knew, as we know, true freedom and prosperity do not come from the clumsy hand of the government. They come from empowering people to live their own lives and control their own destinies through the dignity that is born of work. That is what makes America great. So this morning, we've got 4 outstanding speakers, and I'm going to set this up for you and then let them give their presentations. First off, you're going to hear from one of the great constitutional experts in this country, a tremendous leader I'll introduce in a moment, but he's going to talk a little bit about our founding principles, the fact that America was created based on freedom. America was based on freedom for all. You know, all men are created equal. All people are created equal, not just some here and some there, but all of us are created equal. Created equal, but the outcome is up to each and every one of us. Secondly, we're going to hear from a great leader talking about the free enterprise system, that how with hard work and determination, anyone in this country, no matter where you come from, no matter what your parents did for a living, anyone in this country can succeed in America under the free enterprise system. Our third speaker is going to talk about something that's spelled out right in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It all begins with life. And so we're going to hear a great interlude about how important it is today, more than ever, to stand up for the protection of innocent life, particularly when we see the kind of threat. And by the way, it's not live birth abortion. It's not infanticide. It is murder. If you take the baby home and kill the baby at home, it's murder. It's the same thing's true at the hospital. And finally, we're going to hear from one of America's great heroes who's going to talk about how America is a force for good. In fact, thinking about that part of the session here today, I wrote down so I wouldn't forget, although the older I get, the more these words are hard to say. But on February 6, 1985, President Ronald Reagan said these words in his State of the Union address: "We declare anew to our fellow citizens of the world, freedom is not the sole prerogative of a chosen few. It is a universal right of all God's children." And one of the great experts on that very subject is going to join us here this morning to talk about how America is a beacon of hope, not only for our citizens, but for everyone, every freedom-loving person around the world. And so let's get started. I want to bring out our first speaker, someone you've heard here at CPAC many times before, who's going to talk about those very core founding principles that really make America great. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce the senior senator from the great state of Utah and one of our nation's great experts on the Constitution, the Honorable Mike Lee.
Good morning, CPAC. This is such a wonderful thing. Whenever I get a standing ovation, I know I'm not in Washington, D.C. So it's good to be in the United States of America with fellow freedom-loving individuals. It's always fun to be here, by the way. One of the things I like about being here is that you can talk a little bit about what it means to be a conservative, about the fact that we're conservatives because we want to conserve. Well, what is it we want to conserve? We want to conserve what makes us free, because by being free, we can unlock our unlimited human potential. In order to do that, we have to make sure that the government's not on our back. We understand that, right? We understand that in a way that liberals don't. In order to do that, we've got to restore that part of our culture that understands freedom and understands the need to protect the American people against the risks associated with the accumulation of power in the hands of the few. This is the kind of thing that needs to start in every dinner table, not just in boardrooms, not just in the chambers of government, but it needs to happen around the kitchen table. As a parent, I've had many moments where I've thought, good heavens, what did I do wrong? A few months ago, I had the opposite kind of experience. You love those. It's like having a payday as a parent. Sharon and I have 3 lovely children. Our youngest is a daughter. Her name is Eliza. She's a senior in high school. She's a teenager. And a few months ago, she had to have her wisdom teeth taken out. Now, having your wisdom teeth removed in my culture, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I'm not a drinker. We don't drink. And so when somebody gets their wisdom teeth out, it's sometimes the one chance you can see what it would be like to see that person drunk. And so you'll find if you have any Mormon friends, you'll see whenever they get the wisdom teeth out or one of their kids do, they will take videos just to have proof. They want to know, will so-and-so be a weepy drunk or a sad drunk or a friendly drunk or the I love you man kind of drunk? It turns out Eliza is sort of the I love you happy drunk, because as she was coming out of anesthesia, she was saying, I just love you, complimenting the medical staff around her, and then she said, Mom and Dad, I love you, you're such good parents, I love you so much, and then she paused, and she said, and I love federalism, and I love separation of powers. True fact. And if you're curious, I even have the video to prove it, I'm not making this up. And this was one of those moments where as a parent I thought, yes, something I said mattered, something I said made a difference. Why is it so important to focus on this? Why does this matter to me? Why do I believe it should matter to all Americans? Well, as Justice Scalia used to say, Justice Scalia, by the way, who loved him? We lost him just over 3 years ago, and we miss him very much. But one of the things he used to say is, any tin-horn dictator around the world can have a Bill of Rights. But whether or not it's able to protect you, to protect any individual, depends on the extent to which that system of government constrains those in power and prevents them from accumulating excessive power. Now, you've heard a lot about this accumulation of power in recent days, and all of a sudden, on the left, we see a magical resurgence, a magical reawakening of this idea that there ought to be separation of powers within our system of government. I almost went into anaphylactic shock when I saw Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi talking about separation of powers on national television. That's great, but I wish they would have talked about it sooner. Where was their outrage over the violation of the Constitution and the separation of powers in the last decade? Where was the concern about Congress's Article 1 power to declare war when President Obama declared a national emergency in 2011 as part of his undeclared war in Libya? Where was the concern about Congress's Article 1 power over immigration and naturalization when, in 2012, President Obama, having failed to get legislation passed through Congress that he wanted, created a brand new immigration amnesty program out of thin air? Or when he, again, unilaterally expanded his unconstitutional, illegal program in 2014, just days after his party had suffered massive losses at the polls. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, our deviation from federalism and from separation of powers, the vertical protection of federalism that keeps most of the power close to the people at the state and local level, and the horizontal protection, of separation of powers that says we're going to have one branch that makes the laws, another branch that enforces them, and yet another branch that interprets them where people come into conflict as to their meaning. We've deviated from both of those principles under the leadership of houses of representatives, of senates, and White Houses of every conceivable partisan combination. What is making America great again, and what I believe will continue to make America great again, is our continued move in that direction toward rebalancing power, toward sending power back to where it belongs, which is with the people. In order to reignite this national conversation that I think we need to have, I've written a book, a new book that comes out on April 23rd. It's called Our Lost Declaration. You can buy it on Amazon today, by the way, pre-order. But it delves into some of these topics. It delves into why it is that we became a country in the first place. Why it is that 2.5 centuries ago, under the administration of King George III, we decided that we as a people had been taxed too much. We had been regulated too oppressively. We had been represented by a government that was far from us and slow to respond to the needs of the people. We, as Americans, can learn much from our founding generation, from remembering why it is that we fly the stars and stripes and no longer the Union Jack. It wasn't just about getting rid of a monarchy. It was about our freedom. This isn't a partisan issue. This is a constitutional issue, and it is an absolute imperative for our freedom. Just as we have been since 1776, we, as Americans, are ready for this fight. Are you ready to join me and your fellow Americans in restoring freedom? I thank each of you for the work that you do. You're the activists, you're the people who move the movement. I say, bring it on. Let's roll. Let's keep making America great again. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, to discuss the free enterprise system, please welcome from the BlazeTV, Deneen Borelli.
Good morning, Patriots. Now that was #week. I said, what's up, Patriots? It's a beautiful day for liberty. America is great because America is an exceptional country. An exceptional country where anyone can succeed. And our exceptionalism makes us a unique country and sets us apart from anywhere else in the world. Our exceptionalism is unique, and a big part of what makes America exceptional is not only what Senator Mike Lee just so eloquently said, but the fact that we have freedom. Freedom. America's economic free enterprise is comprised of freedom to choose, property rights, profit motive, competition for goods and services, consumers with the power of the purse, where you choose what goods and services succeed or fail. Freedom is a beautiful thing. And free enterprise is working. President Trump's pro-growth economy is delivering for all Americans. All Americans. Lower taxes, lower regulations. Businesses are incentivized to hire, grow, and innovate. Our economy is the envy of the world. Manufacturing is back. Over 400,000 jobs added under President Trump. The war on coal is over. Over. America is the #1 producer of oil and natural gas. January jobs report beat expectations again. Unemployment is near a 50-year low. National unemployment, 4%. Black unemployment, 6.8%. Wages are up 3%, all under President Trump. But sadly, my friends, our free enterprise system is under assault from within. Why is that? Because Democrats believe more in the power of big government than in the power of the individual. And Democrats are so desperate, they are openly embracing socialism. Embracing socialism. The affinity for socialism is on the rise, where Democrats want big government to be the end-all and be-all, from the cradle to the grave. They want to dictate your everyday way of life and expand government as much as possible. The 2020 Democrat presidential candidates are trying to out-left each other, trying to break away from the pack and pander to their base for votes. And let's face it, Democrat policies are horrible. The new Green Deal, Medicare for all, tax the rich, reparations, free college tuition, and did I mention tax the rich? It's the fundamental transformation of America on steroids. Here's another reason Democrats are desperate. Because President Trump is looking out for the forgotten men and women. And he got big government out of the way of hardworking families. But Democrats are ignoring America's economic success under President Trump because, wait for it, because it's President Trump. They are doing and saying anything they can to discredit the president and distract Americans from his accomplishments. President Trump is called a racist. Nancy Pelosi called the bonuses that hardworking Americans get crumbs. Maxine Waters wants to impeach President Trump. Democrats despise President Trump. Democrats despise Trump's administration. Democrats despise the president's policies, and Democrats despise each and every one of you here today. You deplorables, you. How dare you think independently? How dare you embrace freedom? How dare you? You, along with President Trump, are a threat to Democrats. My friends, America is unlike any other country in the world. And let me remind you what President Trump said during his State of the Union address, and I quote, "America was founded on liberty and independence, not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free." And he also said, "Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country." I know I will never let that happen on my watch, and I know you won't either. Before I close, my friends, I want to leave you with this thought, that our country does not guarantee you success, but liberty guarantees you the opportunity to succeed. God bless you all, and may God bless America. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, to discuss the dignity of the person, please welcome from the Susan B. Anthony List, Marjorie Dannenfelser.
Thank you. Senator Mike Lee promised an interpretive dance, and I did not see it. I think he was struggling over what to do with separation of powers and what that might look like on stage here. Maybe next time. I am honored to join you to help you kick off the premier gathering of conservative activists in America. And wow, have we grown since when I was here in college. Good job, Matt and Dan. This crew is amazing. You know, it's providential that the first CPAC was held during one of the darkest moments in our nation's history, the January after Roe versus Wade decision, which was an affront to the founding principles and human dignity we've endured for 46 years. America is more than a form of government. We know that. It's a set of promises to its people. The Declaration of Independence promises a government that respects and safeguards the inalienable rights of every human being. The first among those rights, the font of every other right, the right to life. And of course, we know that the Constitution acknowledges that America was founded to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, our children. What makes these promises revolutionary and a beacon of hope to the entire world is that it puts America's founding squarely on the side of the powerless, the defenseless, the marginalized, the lonely, those in the shadows. It defies the tyranny of the strong over the weak, the idea that somehow might makes right. Our rights are not contingent upon government's plans or our plans, but exist because God willed us into being, loved us with an unfathomable love, and created each one of us, boy and girl, with a specific purpose that only we can fill. Whenever our culture loses touch with these principles, injustice and suffering follow, even in our own great nation. Great human rights movements in our nation's history, abolition, suffrage, the civil rights movement, the child labor movement, have pointed towards these promises of our founding documents as an anchor of truth, an invitation to servant leadership, and an antidote to indifference. Roe versus Wade was a profound betrayal of America's foundational promises. In just one fateful day, that decision and its companion decision, Doe versus Bolton, swept away every single law in this nation protecting unborn children. Edward Lazarus, who was a former clerk for liberal Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun, of all people, said that, quote, Roe borders on the indefensible. A constitutional right to privacy broad enough to include abortion has no meaningful foundation in constitutional text, history, or precedent. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, quote, that Roe, quote, provoked, not resolved conflict. Instead of deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed, the court, in an act of extreme hubris, disenfranchised every American and our representatives, imposing abortion on demand through birth, as the national status quo. Instead of securing life and liberty for all of our children, we failed our promises to our people. Since 1973, we have collectively destroyed 60 million boys and girls intended for this world. Each one made, as President Trump said in his State of the Union message the other day, in the holy image of God. Our country's abortion laws are so extreme that it puts us in the company of only 7 other countries in the world, including China and North Korea. Regimes that Lindsey Graham is always saying, that's a human rights club you do not want to be in. Though we advocate for human rights around the world, our role as the biblical shining city on the hill and what President Reagan envisioned and spoke of so often remains tragically tarnished. Where did we go wrong? Friends, we have to ask that question. We're on the other side of it now, and the horror can be gotten used to, just like every other evil. Children get used to their own abuse. Victims across the board during our history got used to the usurpation of their rights. We cannot get used to this horror, even with 3,000 every day we will never know. How do we depart so radically from the defining principles that makes America exceptional? This is not who we're supposed to be, and it is not at our core who we are. A few days ago, we witnessed the logical conclusion to which road leads. The U.S. Senate had the opportunity to vote on the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Act, legislation to ensure that babies born alive during failed abortions receive the same treatment as any other premature baby would require to sustain its life. This bill responds to, as you well know, the radical efforts in New York and Virginia, and now popping up in so many states across this country, where they would extend abortion to the point when a mother is even in labor. In fact, extend that so-called right to the baby's birthday. Every single Democrat in the Senate had the chance that day to take a stand against infanticide, against murder. All but 3 of them refused. The inhumanity of the modern Democratic Party's position on abortion has now been exposed. We should be grateful for that. Safe, legal, and rare, that old Clinton way of looking at it is just a distant memory. Safe, legal, and rare is not their mantra. What their mantra is that if you signed up for a dead baby, you're gonna get one, no matter what. There may be a temptation to look at this last vote and be discouraged, but do not be discouraged. The truth sets us free. Clarity is vital in moments like this. The battle lines have been drawn. America, who is a part of America that has been standing on the sidelines, cannot miss and is not missing this moment. Just this past week, we got polling in light of Virginia and New York that showed that Democrats, self-described pro-life, moved from 20% to 34%. People under the age of 45, I think I call those young people now, had a 20-point jump in how many people considered themselves pro-life. We are having a national conversation about life and protecting it or not in a way that we have never before, not since Roe versus Wade. We're witnessing panic, desperation, and overreach on the other side that is typical of a dying cause. Life is winning everywhere in the hearts and minds of Americans. In President Trump, we have the most productive pro-life president in history. He is delivering on his promises to the pro-life voters who propelled him to victory, and he is surpassing our hopes. With the president fully engaged and leading by example, the pro-life movement is ready to go on offense, defeat abortion extremists in all the states, aggressively challenge Roe, and a court now transformed with outstanding constitutionalist judges chosen by this president, and protect our pro-life allies in Congress. We will also re-elect President Trump in 2020 with the muscle of the pro-life movement solidly behind him. And life will be a pivotal and defining issue of this coming election. The extreme position that is supported only by a tiny sliver of the American people, that it's somehow justifiable to kill a newborn child or abandon her to die, is one that no presidential candidate wants to have to be on the other side of. In the last presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton tried to rationalize all this, and it didn't go well, thanks to President Trump. Candidate Trump. He had the courage to illuminate the brutal reality of abortion in debate on national TV for the very first time on a debate stage. Now, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, and every other potential Democratic primary candidate will have to answer for where they stand. Recently, I had the extreme privilege of introducing President Trump to young families and young people whose stories were so powerful and a reminder of the love and the humanity at the center, the core of the pro-life movement. There were women and children who had been spared from the destructive avarice of the abortion industry and the callous indifference of its political allies. Never before have abortion survivors been invited into the Oval Office for conversation with a president. The beauty of their lives that day and the heartbreaking thought of a world without any of them impels us to fight. One of my favorites was a young woman from Indiana who was the top lobbyist for the abortion anti-discrimination bill that's making its way to the Supreme Court. This young woman with Down syndrome talked about her life as beautiful, valuable, worth it, and stop eliminating her brothers and sisters with Down syndrome. Another of my favorites, Melissa Ohden, was a survivor of abortion. She survived after 5 days of sitting in a saline abortion situation. 5 days she sat in that, and by a miracle, she survived. And she's a beautiful woman, 41 years old, with 2 little children. It's time to renew our commitment to our founding documents and their promises. We've been estranged from this great heritage because of Roe versus Wade and the hearts that led to that. The duty of conservatives, I believe, in this particular moment is to prod the memory of a nation that is suffering from a rootless amnesia that has led to death. Alexis de Tocqueville observed, "The greatness of America lies not in being more enlightened than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults. To make America great again, Roe must go. And abortion must end." And like every other human rights movement, we know this, all of those human rights movements proceeding in an unbroken line throughout American history, pro-lifers will be told, you can't. We've heard this before, you can't. But with humility, we must admit that's not true. We cannot do this alone. We believe life will be victorious because of another guiding American principle, faith in the Creator, our Creator who endowed us with unalienable rights, who turns no into yes, who turns can't into can. And that's what makes America great. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, to discuss a force for good, please welcome, with the National Rifle Association, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ollie North.
Thank you all. Wow. Good morning. As the U.S. Marine here this morning, I have two missions. One, get us back on schedule. And number two, to answer the question, what makes America great? Look at, we're the greatest nation on the planet because of one word, and that word is freedom. Freedom is about people. Individual citizens who know that in their heart, America is the greatest nation on earth because the American people are the freest people on earth. That's what makes America great. We're the only nation in history with a constitution that begins with these words, "We the people," thus defining who governs our country. Ours is the only constitution that recognizes God, not some prince or potentate, as God is the grantor of the blessings of liberty. Ours is the only constitution containing a real Bill of Rights, which protects the freedoms of every citizen from the awesome power of government. Ours is the only founding document which gives every law-abiding citizen the right to pray or not as they believe, to come and go as we want, to speak as we please, and among other freedoms, the right to keep and bear arms has no constitutional restrictions. Ours is the only country on the planet where every law officer, every member of our armed forces, every elected official takes an oath of office with words like these. They raise their right arm and they say, "I solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to same." That pledge is not to a person, a purpose, or a political party. It is to the Constitution of the United States, all of it, every word in it. And that oath ends with the words, "So help me God." I've raised my right hand to take and administer that oath hundreds of times since I first did so in front of a U.S. Marine recruiter on the 29th of December, 1961. On September 8th last year, I again pledged to support and defend our Constitution when I was given the privilege to serve as president of the National Rifle Association of America. No, nearly my whole life I've been blessed to be able to keep company with heroes, those who defend our freedoms overseas, as a Marine and as a war correspondent for Fox News. And now I get to keep company with the men and women of our nation's oldest civil rights organization who defend our freedoms here at home. That's what the NRA is all about, freedom. And as many of you know, the NRA is now in the midst of a serious fight to protect the Second Amendment and the First in a trial up in Albany, New York. Our opponents call themselves gun control advocates. They are not. They ought to call themselves what they really are, the vanguard of the Disarm America movement. You see, they're not going to be content to simply ignore the last four words of that Second Amendment, "shall not be infringed." They intend to repeal all 27 words and then confiscate every privately owned firearm in our country. They want to disarm you. No Second Amendment, no individual freedom, no civilian ownership of firearms, period. The Second Amendment is actually the purest metaphor for freedom, because if you're not free to defend yourself and your loved ones, then you're really not free at all. Our Second Amendment is unique. There's no other country that has anything like it. But if the disarmament movement succeeds in taking over our government, every one of those God-given individual rights, liberties, and freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution will be up for grabs. That means the America we know now will be no longer. It will cease to exist. There's one organization standing in their way, the National Rifle Association of America, with more than 5 million members. Now, at this point, I would normally ask for a show of hands of how many of you are members, but I don't want to embarrass anybody. But if you're not a member, join us now. We'll be pleased to have you in our ranks.
Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have a new favorite line, that Donald Trump is a symptom, not the cause. But here's the truth. Our president and all of us who believe in making America great are a cure to an ideology of elitism that looks down on those who have guns or pray to God and calls our neighbors in the heartland deplorables. A cure to an America last foreign policy that restricted the might of our military and denied our wounded heroes the care they deserve. A cure to targeting law enforcement while celebrating those who dishonor our flag. A cure to a Secretary of State who lied about Benghazi and a former president who disgracefully called the murder of those 4 Americans a conspiracy theory. And a cure to those who deny America's greatness. Over the last 2 years, we cured the ills they brought to our country. Let's stand together so the new leaders of the House of Representatives don't make America weak again.
Thank you. And since I've talked a lot about and to God in my lifetime, I ask you to pray for the NRA. We know it's freedom that makes America great, and we know that the NRA is freedom's safest place. God bless you. Semper Fidelis.
Oliver North. Well, as we just heard, what makes America great is many things. The fact that we're a nation founded on the principle of liberty, that we're a nation where anyone can succeed in our free enterprise system, that we're a nation that understands that God has granted us rights, and the most important of these is life. And we're a nation, as you just heard, that understands that we don't just talk about freedom, we actually fight for it, not just for ourselves, but for anyone who wants that freedom. A few years back, some of you have heard me tell this, but years ago, I had the chance to go to Philadelphia for the first time, and maybe I'm a little bit of a geek, but as a kid, I always thought of our founders like superheroes, bigger than life. So when I got a chance to go with my wife to Independence Hall, I was ready to be blown away. You know, I kind of thought it might be like the Justice League. I'd see where the superheroes were at. And as I got up early that morning to go into one of our nation's treasured structures, I saw as I came in that the desk and the tables there, the chairs and the other things were very much like the ones you're sitting in today, and tables and chairs that we use all across this country. A little bit older, but they weren't much different. You see, what it reminded me of is the fact that our founders were just ordinary people. Ordinary people who did something quite extraordinary. You see, they didn't just risk their political careers. They didn't risk their business ventures. These were people, I dare say, patriots who risked their lives for the freedoms we hold dear today. What makes America great are not just the things we talked about, but that simple fact that all throughout our history, not just there in Independence Hall, but in places across this country and around the world, that there have always been men and women of courage who are willing to stand up and think more about not their futures, but the future of their children and their children's children, to ensure that they have the freedoms and liberties that those folks literally risk their lives for. That's what makes America great, and that's our challenge to each and every one of us here, to make sure that all those who fought and many who died do not die in vain, that we continue to fight for those freedoms every single day. Thank you, and God bless you.